Sedimentary rock is one of the most major types of rocks out there. If you go outside, it's actually the most common type of rock that you would ever find. About 75% of all rocks on the surface are sedimentary rock. So what are sedimentary rocks? The rock that's formed when sediments, like little pieces of rocks, right, become compacted. That means like smushed together and then cemented. And that means like locked in together so that they stay that long term. Sediments can come from any type of rock, so any kind of weathering and erosion that would take place to break down into little tiny pieces or sediments, pebbles, whatever it is. Once they get compacted together, then they stay that way for a long term, then you get your sedimentary rock. Here's an example of sedimentary rock called conglomerate. If you think of the word conglomerate, it often refers to like almost like a bunch of corporations that are all owned under like one banner. One company owns a lot of different types of things. So that's one way to remember lots of different types of pebbles that are now all under one type of rock. All right. And you could see that, of course, when we talked about the texture before, this is a clear example of the coarse grains, the very large grains you're very easily able to see. Now, you can actually have a rock cycle that's just for sedimentary rock. So this is an example of the sedimentary rock cycle. You have your pre-existing rock, we'll call it sedimentary rock, that goes under some kind of weathering. So that weathers away into sediments, gets eroded, carried away to a new location where it gets deposited or dropped off. It gets compacted, smushed, and cemented together, locked in together, becomes sedimentary rock, where it then gets weathered away again, and then it goes through this whole process over and over again. So it can get caught in like a sedimentary rock cycle loop and not turn into the other types of rocks for quite a long time, actually. Now, strata is the name of the layers of sedimentary rock that forms from the deposition or depositing of sediments. So, strata is always associated with sedimentary rock. And you could see the different layers here. So, all of these rocks could be a different type of rock, or perhaps there's some kind of condition of the atmosphere that changes the color of the rocks. Whatever it is, stratification is the layering or the process of like one layer gets laid down and then another layer and then another layer, and it just keeps on happening as it just keeps getting dropped off. So it's possible that on the surface, weather and erosion is taking place, moving all the different types of rocks over there. The sediments get deposited and drop down there, but that the types of rocks on the surface may change over time or may come from different locations. The river may have carved, a new location over time, and it's bringing different types of rocks over, and that might account for why the rocks look so different at the time. Right here, you can see a person. They normally always try to put a person in front of a rock formation so that you can get a sense of scale of how big the rock is. Because without that person there, you're not really too sure, well, how big is this really? But when you have a person there, you could say, okay, if that person is, roughly about 5 feet tall, then if this one is, if this formation is three of her roughly, or 3.5, this might be like, 20 feet tall or something like that, 18 feet tall, whatever it is. So anytime you think of strata, think layers. Comes up with the term stratosphere, like the layers of the atmosphere. Stratovolcanoes are made out of layers. Stratus clouds form in layers. So that root word strata always has to do with it. Here you could see another example right here of this rock formation that's in the middle of the water. You can assume that it was much wider, and then over time it got eroded along the sides, and this was the most resistant rock that was left over. But you could see the distinct different layers as you go up there. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is what's called the principle of superposition. So principle, not like our principle. I'm talking about principle of, like, it's like a rule that happens. So the principle of superposition states that when you have a sedimentary rock formation, that the oldest rock is always going to be at the bottom and the youngest is always going to be at the top. And gradually, as you go from the bottom to top, you're basically going forward in time, right? So, and is on the reverse, as you go down, you're going backwards, farther away in time. So the question is, what is the law of superposition? And why do you think it works that way? So I'd like you to take a guess right now. Think in your head, why would it be this way? Well, if you're building a building, right, nobody builds a building starting at the top and then working their way down. It has to exist on top of something, right? So you start with the foundation, the lowest layer. So if the first layer gets deposited there first, the next layer has to go on top of it, and then the next one on top of that. And then over time, you always end, just like with a building, with the topmost layer on the top. It's just the only way it would make sense for that to happen. Now, you might be saying, well, how did it get up there? Well, that might be tectonic forces being squeezed together may have pushed up that one part over here, where it once was way down there. Or perhaps this type of rock is more resistant to weather and erosion, and the part that we're looking at right here, like where the rock that used to be on top of this area with the bushes there, that may have all gotten eroded and weathered away, whereas this part did not yet. So there's could be different reasons, but the law of superposition maintains. If you look over here, you can actually see that on this layer of rock right over here, you can kind of see that they look different, but it's not until you look over here that it really shows you all the different layers. And then you can say, okay, this group down here must be the oldest because of the law of superposition. This must be the youngest. That's up here, the newest, you could say. And what's pretty cool about this is that in different layers, you're going to find different fossils. And then because of that, you can then think about it. Well, hold on. If this fossil was found there and another fossil was found down here, which fossil would be older? Well, if you use the law of superposition, of course, this one must also be older. So then whatever creatures are found here must be older than these ones. They came later. And we can use this to basically fill out the fossil record and find out how old the oldest fossils are, which animals and dinosaurs and creatures were on the Earth at the same time together, which ones evolved into which other ones. There's tons of information that you can find out from the fossil record that would be in the rock layers.